All right, looks like we're ready to go, Chairwoman Cardozo.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. I'd like to call the Amity Regional Board of Education Finance Committee meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. First on our agenda is the discussion on possible action on minutes in your packet. We have 2 sets of minutes, and we can take them one at a time. Everyone had an opportunity to review the first set of meetings from March 9th, 2020 on page 2.
And just in case anybody forgot, we did not actually approve those at our April 20th meeting. We had approved the special meeting that happened, but not the actual real meeting that happened.
So let's clear it up now. Do we have a motion to accept the March 9th meeting minutes?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Thank
So
you,
I
Matt.
hear a
I'll second.
motion by Mr. Giglietti.
I
I'll
believe
second.
second by John Grabowski.
John, a second. Excellent.
All those in favor by a raise of hands.
No, do you mind if I call the roll? Sorry, it just helps things.
There is easier. Thank you, Dr. Byers. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I think it's easier for Ms. Pero to record. So Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
okay, Mr. Grabowski,
Yep.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
On to the April 20th meeting minutes. I don't know why I can't talk today. I'm sorry, folks. Do we have a motion to approve the April 20th Finance Committee meeting minutes?
Sure, I'll make that motion too.
All right, a motion
I'll
by
second
Mr.
it.
Perfect, Mr. Giglietti, and then seconded by Mr. Grabowski. Is there any discussion? All right, then I'd be happy to call the roll. Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. So now we're going to get to a very interesting piece of our presentation this evening. Presentation and discussion of first quarter executive summary review of the Amity Pension Fund Sick and Severance Account and OPEB Trust.
We have
Great.
Mike Ross here with us tonight from FIA to do that presentation.
So I'd be happy, I'm not sure if I can share the screen. I'd be happy to do that if that would be helpful. Is that okay?
Yes, I believe Mr. DeRosa can allow you to share that screen.
Okay, I'll try hitting this. Looks like that's disabled. So I'll try my best to reference, I'll give it another 30 seconds, but. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to cover a couple of things. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to make it a little bigger while we're
You
at
can
it.
pinch it. You can pinch it
Yeah,
out.
How's that?
That's
that's
good.
better.
Much better.
So, listen, obviously, we're in unprecedented times. We're all coming in a strange form because of that. The market is not immune to that. So if you think about the last time I presented to this group, we literally had hit the all-time high for all the assets for the pension fund, for all portfolios. We had full employment in the economy. We had record things, and things were good from a market standpoint. This came out of left field, to use a technical term, and markets reacted very poorly and very swiftly. So this is updated through yesterday. So this is the most current information. This is not in your packet. I will quickly shift to what is in your packet, but I thought it was important to level set because you have March 31st numbers. So the pension stood at just shy of 13 million through yesterday. And that was an improvement. And let me shift now to the the first quarter summary, but that was an improvement of almost $1 million since the report you have in your packet. So we lost a lot, but we recovered about half in a month's time. So I'll go through this, and please interrupt me with questions. I'll try my best to pause because I know sometimes it's hard on Zoom to interrupt. So we all know the market sold off. What was the reaction or the response? It was the $2+ trillion CARES Act that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The bottom left-hand side of the screen, blow this up a little bit, shows you where that money went. And what's less important is about where it went for this purpose is the market liked the fiscal stimulus, and the market liked the Fed's action, which was also to just increase the Fed balance sheet by quite a bit. So the market at the depths of the crisis had sold off 30% or so. And now is since equities have rebounded more than 50% back from that big decline. So you saw that in your portfolio, and we'll cover that in a little bit, but you basically recovered about half of what was sold off in the decline. You see a lot of red on this screen. This is through March, not through yesterday, but you can see how quickly this happened. Again, I saw you at the beginning of the year. We were hitting record highs. Everything was up. And then you can see the S&P, so US stocks down 20% for the quarter. That's down, again, about 30% from its high because it had gone up first and then lost this to get to down 20. You can see international markets are down 23%. And again, I'm not going to go over every line. Bonds were, depending on where you were in the bond market, bonds were good. If you were in treasuries, they were very good. So people raced into the safest possible bonds, US treasuries. They were up and they were positive. Corporate bonds, on the other hand, were negative. Now, they've rebounded quite a bit since this quarter, but during the big downdraft, really anything people could sell and buy cash in treasuries, they sold. So that's the environment that we were in. The Fed stepping in and the CARES Act kind of solidified things. And since then, the market has gone up quite a bit, as I mentioned. I'm going to skip over these next two. I'll focus on, you could look at this top, I'll try to blow this up one more. Yeah, this top chart here, just to show you how crazy the bond market was. So,
Mike, excuse me.
I don't think,
Are you
yeah.
referring to
Yeah.
that packet in a particular page?
oh, I'm sorry.
Because we're just looking at the updated balances.
Oh,
The screen isn't changing when you're talking about
oh,
referencing.
I'm sorry. Let me try something different. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We just want to make sure we're looking at the same thing.
Here we go. This should be better. I actually had to come back out. Did that change your screen?
There you go. Yes, thank you very much, Mike.
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
So we covered, well, let me go back then, and I'm sensitive to your time, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just to show you the raw numbers. I mean, you can see a lot of red here. This is US stocks down 20%, international down 23. So just, and again, this is coming off really a great year, and everything looked good going into this year from an economic standpoint. Switching to bonds, though, this shows you when people get fearful and they want protection, they basically will sell anything and buy treasuries. And that's what happened. So if you look here at the top chart, this is where bond yields were in red in March of 2019. They came down a little bit in December, not much, but a little. But look at where they are as of the end of the quarter. And these are all records. The 10-year had never been below 1%. It ended at 0.7. If you think about that, you're investing it for 10 years, getting a 0.7% interest rate. 5-year from 223 a year ago to 0.37. 30-year, again, long dated bonds from 281 to 135. So really unprecedented record low rates in the Treasury market. And then the last thing I'll point out is just timing of markets and how hard it is to time markets. So a couple of things, one, this is the S&P returns from 1950 to 2019. If you miss the top 10 days, your return goes from 7.8 a year to 6.7. You can read this, I won't read it all to you, but if you miss the top 40 days in a 50-year period, your return gets basically almost cut in half. The reason I point that out is, again, it's the temptation in these sell-offs is to sell, but typically the best thing to do is stay the course, which is what we did. We rebalanced for you at the end of March, which was good timing, and hence your recovery, you've participated in that recovery back. And this is the last slide, and then I'll go over the actual numbers. You can see these are typical bear markets and how long they typically last. Most of them, it takes a while to become a bear market. So that this basically the number of months to reach the bear market. You can see, 10 months, 6 months, etc. This was the swiftest sell-off in history. It took, less than 1 month to become a bear market. And then you can see what happens in a typical bear market. This is your typical decline in the middle, and then typically the recovery, and then how a strong return, typically 12 months after the bear market low. Still yet to determine, but arguably we might have already had that low in March, and we've recovered quite a bit since then. So it's just an interesting data point, just how swift and how unprecedented this decline has been and how quickly the markets have recovered. So with that, I'll point it to the pension. So again, as of the end of March, you are at just about 12 million. You're now just shy of basically 13 million as of yesterday, up a little bit today. So you call it 13 million. So we've recovered $1 million of the portfolio in a little more than 1 month. Your return, as you could probably imagine, was not good for the quarter, down 14.6%. As I mentioned, U.S. stocks, international stocks were both down over 20+%. So you are not immune. You can see at the top of the page, you lost about 2 million, but again, you've recovered 1 million of that back in 5 weeks. So just to show how volatile the markets are. I'm not going to go over every page in the interest of your time. I'll just quickly point out the OPEB. And you can see 2.2 million for the OPEB. That was a loss of about 386,000. Again, you've gotten roughly half of that back in the last 5 weeks. And then you can see in the, bear with me here, sick and severance, obviously a smaller portfolio, stood at about 620,000. That had a loss of about 63,000, investment loss. You also took money out, but an investment loss of 63,000. And again, that has recovered a little less than half since then. So I'll stop sharing now. So obviously, very, very, the stock market was signaling a severe crisis, which we're in. I think no one's expecting this crisis to end tomorrow, but I think the market is forward looking, and the market's saying, okay, if we look out past the next 3, 6, even 12 months, that Disney will eventually open, and people will eventually go to movies, and people will eventually get on airplanes, and the government has put $2 trillion in. Probably there's going to be another, I don't have a crystal ball, but probably another at least $1 trillion thrown at this. So I think the market's forward looking, saying, hey, we will eventually overcome this. And when we do and get back to normal, these companies are worth certainly more than they were when we were selling everything in the middle of March. I'll pause there and I'm happy to take any questions.
We have questions from the floor?
Yeah, it's certainly expected what happened. It was something no one has ever experienced, so no surprises.
I think what's good about what you did as a board and as a client is you did not panic. I can tell you, and I obviously won't name names, there were some clients that panic and sold right at the low and just, locked in a lot of those losses. So, I mean, in a short amount of time, you've recovered about half of that loss. So.
Yeah. Didn't expect that either, Mike. To be honest with you, didn't expect that either. Not this quick.
Yeah, sometimes people have different circumstances, but it's tough to we can't force people to stay the course. So.
No.
John Grabowski, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mike, I was wondering, is it possible for you to email that one page with the update as of May 8th?
Yes, I'll do it right now as soon as I hang up.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work and for your excellent explanation. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.
Take care. All right, let's move on to the next item, item 4 on the agenda, discussion and possible action on contracts over $35,000, page 68.
So we have 3 contracts that we're asking the AFC to recommend the board approve. The first one is the liability auto property insurance LAP that we have with KERMA. We are at the end of a 3-year contract that had it capped at a maximum increase of 3%. And looking at our experience, they are offering a 3% decrease if we would sign on for next year and 2 years afterwards, basically renew a 3-year contract, again, with the same cap that the max increase would be 3%, but could be adjusted lower each year as they're offering the 3% here. So that is a savings of $5,441 from the allowable price and the budgeted price. So we've had excellent service with KERMA. I also think it's not necessarily a wise time to be changing insurance companies, given we don't know what's on the horizon. So I am recommending that we renew with KERMA for a 3-year contract. The first price being $176,939 for LAP.
Thank you, Terry. And I see Chris Brow joined us at approximately 5:50 p.m.
Sorry about that.
No,
It was too early before, and by the time I looked again, it was too late. Sorry.
Well, we're gonna dock your pay. Don't worry about it.
Go right ahead.
What 10% of 0 is what, Chris?
Yeah. Nothing comes from nothing, right?
Well, I will make a motion that we recommend the Amity Board of Education award the liability automobile property insurance to Connecticut Interlocal Risk Management Agency, otherwise known as KERMA of New Haven, for the price of $176,939 for July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023, with a maximum of a 3% increase in the second and third years of the contract. This will be a 3-year contract for liability, automobile, and property insurance. And we also ask that Amity waive the bid requirement.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jenny. Discussion. Questions for Terry? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Dr. Byers?
Absolutely. Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti?
Why did he jump ahead of me? I was second.
It's alphabetical
You
now.
don't like me. You don't like me, Dr. Byers. Okay, I'll say yes.
Mr.
I said yes.
Grabowski?
Okay.
Yep.
And Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Thank you very much. My apologies to Mr. Giglietti.
No, that's all right. I just have, I'm a little sensitive with all the stuff going on.
You need to change that last name.
Yeah.
Excuse me 1 second. I just want to check. What was Mr. Giglietti's vote?
Yes.
It was yes.
Thank you.
The next contract is for paving. This is part of the bonded project. We plan to do this in 2 sections, one section this summer and one section next summer after the athletic projects are complete. 21 contractors received the bid, and 7 vendors submitted prices ranging from $1.64 per square foot to $3.08 per square foot. We did budget at $2.50 for an estimate. This is for the work that will be done this summer. We will have to rebid next summer for that project because they will not hold prices for over a year. The price is very favorable, probably due to the low oil price, which affects this. So it's B&W Paving and Landscape of Waterford, Connecticut. Jim has checked their references. It's a large company and many municipality references, and he's comfortable making the recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
I'll second.
And that was Mr. Grabowski?
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Thank you. Discussion, questions for Terry?
I mean, with the gas prices as low as they are, oil prices, this is about as cheap as you can get to do it, right? I mean, this is really good pricing at this time.
There are also some paving contractors are also no contractors are that busy right now. It's tough
Right.
time. People are
Right.
saying, not interested. We don't have the money to pay for it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good time to be getting contracts.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Can we take the vote?
Absolutely. Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and the last one is the transportation contract. So the board had approved the template for the contract with the overall rates back in March. And now we reached out to each of the individual owner operators that we negotiated with and contracted with. And you have a list following of the 22 contracts that are identified for Amity. And by each contractor, the number of full runs, number of half runs per the contract rate. No change in contractors. These are the existing contractors. This is a 5-year contract for the bus service.
And this coordinated contract dates with the Bethany and Woodbridge elementary schools, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Both in terms of the length of the contract itself, as well as the rates, as well as all the other provisions within the contract. The only thing that's sort of outside of this are any kind of special exceptions we might have for some of our more unique special education runs.
In athletics, we have, we list the athletic price in there, but it largely pertains to Amity.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion. We recommend the Amity Board of Education award transportation contracts beginning July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2025 to the current owner operators per the list below.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Turner.
So this is one of those that I am a little concerned about, and that's the new stipulation we put on the bus drivers around the extra insurance, the $1 million insurance. And we did get some feedback from bus drivers on that. And it is going to be a high cost, especially for those drivers that only have one route. So if you have a route for $55,000 and you have to pay an extra $5,000 of insurance that you didn't expect, that's a big chunk of your profit over operating the bus. So I know there's been, it was raised at one level, and I know it was a recommendation that a lawyer mentioned, but not the other schools aren't doing that in our district. And it's also not fair if we're truly thinking of supporting the owner operator model, which could be 1 run or 2 runs. It's not fair to put a burden on those smaller operators that has a high impact compared to the number of runs if you have like a B&B, right? Where they've got 13 runs or 12 runs or whatever they have, that they can spread that cost across those, when they scale up like that. So that's my big concern around this. And I'm really having a problem with that in the contract itself.
So just to address that, it was not simply one attorney who recommended it, but 2, as well as our insurance companies, specifically KERMA. And essentially what happened is that general liability insurance this current school year removed the protection for these independent, for bus companies, related specifically to sexual harassment and molestation. And that came out of the general liability insurance. And so it was the recommendation across the board that owner operators acquire that particular type of insurance because we, let's face it, live in a highly litigious society. And something like that is going to be of significant concern. The initial recommendations as part of the negotiations was for owner operators to carry essentially a $2 million policy. We did negotiate that down to a $1 million policy at the recommendation of the owner operators on the negotiating team, because they felt that that was something that they could reasonably acquire without it impacting their total costs too much. And yes, Mr. Brow, you are correct that with larger companies, they're able to defer that cost across many more buses. But ultimately, in the end, our boards of ed, and again, it's all 3 of them, Bethany, Woodbridge, and Amity, we have never provided the insurance for these independent owner operators because they are their own companies, nor would that be something we recommend. But in order to protect boards of education, we felt that it was something that was necessary to negotiate in the contract, and that was agreed upon by the 3 boards of education, as well as the 4 owner operators who were at the table negotiating on behalf of all of our independent contractors.
Right, but the independent contractors are being represented by what, 2 or 3 individuals?
No, there are 4 independent owner operators who sit at the table. Yes.
4. And each of the boards was represented by who?
By the business managers and the superintendents.
Okay. And again, I know we haven't insured the bus lines before, but it's not something that is impossible to do. We could take out a general policy that would cover any of our bus drivers. Could we not? And then split that cost equally among those routes. So each route had a fair share of that one policy. Getting a policy for 1 million or 2 million doesn't really decrease the price of the policy that much. It doesn't really make much of a difference. It's that initial policy, that risk.
Apparently, it decreased it significantly enough that that's what they came back to the table to propose to us and they felt comfortable with. The other thing I will say is, no, we've never taken out an insurance policy on behalf of our owner operators because they are independent contractors that we contract with. So it would be no different than us taking out a policy for malpractice against our athletic trainer. That's not something that we would typically do because the whole point is that they are their own independent entities who are operating their own businesses that we contract with. And certainly if Ms. Loomis, if you want to weigh in, because I know you were part of the negotiations and the conversations with the insurance companies as well as the other business managers.
That has been, a long-standing practice, even before this sexual abuse policy issue came up, is that the board does not hold the policy. It really increases our liability if we were to take out that policy. So it has always been the recommendation of our insurance consultant not to be the holder of that policy, to require them to have their own insurance. And we really, thought that if there were going to be any final pushback from the owner operators, it would have been in not signing the contracts. And that did not happen. They all are willing to sign.
Carrie, can you clarify that? I apologize, Chris. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
We have all of the exact same operators that we had previously.
Exact same operators.
So apparently it wasn't enough to dissuade someone from taking the contract.
Correct.
Right. So so if somebody was not at the represented, they weren't at the table doing the negotiation, right? What other choice would they have other than losing the contract, losing the run?
I mean, it's a negotiating platform. They have every opportunity to talk to those individuals who are representing them at the table if they have concern. And we actually sort of, I don't want to say required, but we asked that the negotiating team reach out to every independent owner operator to ask them to get a cost. That was during the process when we were trying to determine whether 2 million or 1 million was fair, so that they returned to us sort of what the cost would have been to get the 2 million liability versus the 1 million, so that we would understand sort of their position in asking us to lower that. And so every owner operator had an opportunity to weigh in with their negotiating team, what it was that they were hoping to achieve. And again, that is the nature of negotiations. I mean, you all have been as part of negotiations at some point. You know that it's somewhat of a thankless job. So not everybody stands up and shouts and says, hey, I want to go spend, 24 hours of my life trying to work out a contract. And so, but we did try to give them opportunities to let us understand what it was that was preventing them from achieving some of our objectives. And they certainly have a strong voice at the table. And, and if this is some sort of perceptive that kind of the single one person, one bus owner operator wasn't represented, there is certainly a single individual owner operator at that table. And that person expressed their views and represented their group and agreed to this contract as well.
Right. I mean, as much as we say owner operator, the fact that we have some people that are running their own buses and then we have others that are running, a dozen buses, it does impact those two groups very differently. And I just don't think it's right to bring in it's one thing to say everybody has to have, bus insurance, as far as general insurance and what have you for rules of the road. But to bring in these new insurances, again, this is a 5-year contract. Some of the numbers that were thrown around were in the thousands of dollars, up to from $3,000 to $5,000 per year for a $1 million policy for one bus. And it wouldn't go down for one bus. That was the starting point. And then it would be a small increase over that for the other extra buses. So I'm having a hard time supporting it because of that and because of the impact on the individual owner operator.
Well, and I suppose we should again consider sort of the order of operations here, because the board has already approved the basic outline of the contract. So at that point, sort of those provisions have been approved. Now, all of these owner operators have signed the contract that the board approved, and we would just like to approve that these owner operators are awarded the contract that they signed and not take that away from them.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Did we have a motion and a second? Because it's been so long. We did. Okay, thank you.
That's why I waited for discussion. There was a motion and a second.
Thank you, Chris. And am I reading this incorrectly? It looks like 10 of the 15 only have one full contract, or just a few, 5 of the 15 that have more than one full contract.
7. There are 8 that have one contract.
Okay.
And then certainly some of them may have contracts with our other districts.
Correct. I just meant with us, because that's
Right.
what we have.
Yes,
So more than half have only one
correct.
and had
And just-
representation.
And we're the only ones requiring this extra insurance.
No, Bethany is requiring it and Woodbridge. Only the town of Orange is not, and they negotiated a year ago before it got separated out of the general liability by the insurance companies.
Right. No, I meant, and I know we're all together in this one. I'm saying with the only town that's not part of this is Orange.
Yes, and they negotiated in a different year at a point where the insurance requirements apparently were very different. Just to add another clarity, again, the idea that somehow a larger company pays less, the larger companies take out a larger policy as well. So as opposed to 1 million, they might be taking out 10 million because they have more to lose if something were to happen. So again, I just want to clarify any sort of misperception in that area.
And
And
more
we leave that
employees.
up to them. We're just saying, just take out 1 million, but some of them are going to opt to take out more as additional protection for their company.
Right, but we know it's a different cost structure, whether you have one policy, even if you had a $5 million policy, it's a lot less than 5 $1 million policies on 5 individuals. Right?
We probably wouldn't have the answer to that.
Yeah,
But for the sake of time, to keep the meeting moving forward, Chris, I thank you for your comments. I think they're noted on the record. If there are any other comments, I would like to entertain them at this time. Hearing none, I'd like to call the motion.
So Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Brow,
No.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
Dr. Turner.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Byers and Terry, for the additional explanation. And thank you, Chris Brow, for the additional questions. I'd like to move on to the next thing in the packet, which is the healthy food certification on page 72.
Annually, we come to the board with the request to participate in the healthy foods. And if you remember from years past, this really, we get about $10,000 or $11,000 a year by participating from the state of Connecticut. But the guidelines really very closely aligned to the USDA guidelines. So just by the fact that we participate in the National School Lunch Program, we are pretty much required to follow these healthy food guidelines. Signing on to this gets us that little bump from the state of Connecticut. So there's 3 motions there, and they're basically saying that the superintendent of school can sign the document that everything we offer for sale to school for students will meet the guidelines, and that we will make the exceptions of special events and fundraisers held outside of the school day, that those will not have to meet the guidelines, and that the sale of beverages also will meet the guidelines unless, again, with those exceptions, that the sale isn't connected with an event after the end of the school day or on a weekend, or it's at the location of an event and it's not sold from a vending machine.
So pretty much status quo. Is that correct, Terry?
Exactly, status quo.
Thank you. The motion is rather lengthy. It is 3 paragraphs as noted in the packet dated May 7th, 2020. Do we have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make we're making one motion for all 3 or 3 motions?
Nope, one for all 3.
I'll make one motion for the 3 motions listed on our packet under Amity Finance Committee.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
Thank
I
you,
didn't
Chris
hear.
Brown.
Sure.
Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call, Dr. Byers will call the roll.
So Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Brow,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And now we're moving on to a similar topic, increasing lunch prices. Unfortunately, a necessary evil.
Yes, I believe it was back in February, I notified the board that, the lunch program was no longer self-sufficient, and, there's many components of it. We feel the aging equipment, the ongoing cost to maintain and repair that, as wages go up, and having, used the fund balance that we had once had in that account. And so a piece of that would be to increase lunch prices. The high school has right now 5 tiers, and we thought if we collapse those into 3, 5 tiers is uncommon for most schools. I'm not really sure how we ended up in that tier structure. So 3 is more common, and really the third one being for the deli bar, which includes boar's head meat, a higher priced deli meat. So we worked with the Chartwell's folks, and we looked at the most common price, common sale item, and it seems it's the grill meal at $3.30. So we thought that if the pizza meal were to go up to that and then bring the Sono meal down a dime and the Create meal up 15 cents, we would get to a middle ground of $3.70 and then increase the deli by 15 cents. Looking at that and estimating if sales are what they were, which is obviously a big if at this point, given that we're not selling kids food right now, there's the potential to raise, just shy of $50,000, which would help support the cafeteria account and make it more self-sufficient. Looking at surrounding towns, our prices would be, as far as DIRG B goes, we'd be right in the range of DIRG B prices. Some of the surrounding towns, we might be a little bit higher on them. The proposal also is to increase the adult price at the middle school, which is not in sync with the high school adult price. So trying to line that up. There's not a really significant amount of adult meals that's going to make a big dent into the price, into the production. But
Thank you, Terry. We get a motion to approve the recommendation.
I move we recommend to the Amity Board of Ed to increase these lunch prices.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. Thank you, Chris Brow. Any further discussion? Okay,
These
hearing none.
prices-
Go ahead, Dr. Turner.
Oh, just a quick question. These prices that you have listed for other school districts, are those their average prices or the range?
that is their price that was listed on their websites.
Oh, okay, thanks.
As far as discussion,
Please. Do we have some other than Dr. Turner? Please go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say and use this as an opportunity to thank all the work and all the lunches. I know we're probably over 10,000 now, and I just found out that some of these lunches are even being provided on Fridays to help over the weekend a little bit, and just the extra effort of, keeping that up, making that, even at the school next door here in Orange, they are out there every afternoon ready to, or more, or whatever, noontime-ish, whatever it is, 11:30 or noon, to hand these bags out. And they've got boxes and boxes of brown paper bags. And so just as a thank you for the staff to continue this and keep this moving and keeping the students supported and fed during this time. I will say as an aside, I heard there were some jokes about all the oranges, because I guess some kids get oranges and they don't really like little oranges. And so they've got these little oranges left over. And I think that was a couple of years ago, it was the apples. They were all not eating their apples. So anyway, they're all working it out, and they do feel supported and really appreciate the extra food. So thank you again.
Thank you. And it's really a collaborative effort between the 3 towns, because some of the people outside and some of the people in the kitchen are from the elementary district's cafeteria program. So
okay. Yeah.
We are really all working very well together to make this happen for the community.
Great. Thank you.
And we've been pretty consistent at delivering about 650 lunches a day across the 3 delivery sites. And Mr. Brow, you are entirely correct. Our cafeteria staff supports Saturday meals as well. So it's double that number. So they do about 1,300 meals on a Friday afternoon to get it to the families.
Yeah, great.
Actually, it's 2,600 because you get 2 meals.
Right.
You get breakfast and lunch, and then it gets doubled up. So it's
That was double. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Friday's a busy day.
It sounds like it. That's a lot of oranges.
It is.
A lot of food. So we have the motion, we have a second, we have discussion, and now can we have a vote?
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Thank you all. And now, Terry, we have the monthly financials. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those, starting on page 76?
So again, another month with a lot of changes, trying to estimate how things will be. Just a few days after finding out that school will not reopen for the year and trying to make some of those adjustments. So on revenue, there's a decrease in parking income as we will refund the fourth quarter parking to families. It's $25 per family. It's not significant per family, but we figured they do need the assistance they can get at this point. So that's really the change in revenue. Again, you could see estimated salaries going down, both with overtime, substitutes, unpaid leaves, coaches, the associated payroll taxes with those accounts. Transportation, we negotiated an MOU with our owner operators to take a reduction for not providing full service. The hope that they would continue to employ their workers, so they will be available to us when we are ready to open again. Tuition for special ed is the normal changes in special ed tuition. And then the upswings are for a various number of budget transfers, which you'll see later in the packet. And those really relate to items, either one or two unknown to us at the time we were building the budget, but then most of them are things we took out of the 2021 budget and said we would be bringing forward at this time to fund. And then the 1% is indicated on the transfer line to put aside into the capital reserve account. Again, right now it's a placeholder. There's no transfer being made, but that request will come towards the end of the audit, August or September.
And I'd just like to speak to that 1% very briefly. You know, as we enter into the next school year, we have a lot of unknowns, kind of like we have right now during this current school year. But some of our larger concerns that we have really rest in three basic areas. The first is the potential costs for special education services that we have been sort of not able to provide to the fullest extent during the period of offsite learning, and the work that we would have to do to sort of make that up for our students. The second is really around healthcare. So if you notice, you're going to see our healthcare claims have actually gone down since last month. A lot of that is because people can't make their routine office visits or have elective surgeries, at least for the past couple of months. And we are concerned that when we finally get out of this and people have those opportunities, we'll actually see an increase in claims because they can actually start returning to the doctor. The third area is just related to the potential reopening of school and basic equipment like PPEs. So our current recommendation is that every student needs 3 face masks per day. So you can imagine how many face masks we would need to purchase. I'm not even sure where we get them from, but the cost that we would have to incur to allow that to happen. So it is going to be, I know we have not used the 1% ever in the past. We've always returned it to the towns. And I do realize the stress that the towns are going to be feeling because of the challenges that their own taxpayers are facing. But we have some significant concerns about the cost to school districts. And unlike the municipal school districts, we can't go back and ask anybody for money. It would be probably prudent for us to sort of set aside some money at this point in time because we face a 185 days worth of unknown coming up next year that we have very little control over what may happen. So we're tossing that out now so that most of the members of our town finance committees can start thinking about that and can kind of wrap their heads around that we're going to be in a fairly significantly stressed situation financially with some of the information that we're receiving about what next school year might look like.
Thank you, Dr. Byers.
What is the rationale for 3 masks per day?
So it's a very basic rationale, is that you would need, a student would need one for the time period before lunch.
Mhm.
When they go to lunch, obviously they have to take one off so that they can eat. And then they need a second one for the second part of the day. And then they need a spare in case one gets lost, dirty, or
They
there's
touch
some
it.
sort of problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the crazy, you know, I mean, and there's so many unknowns, Dr. Turner. We don't even know if we can serve lunches. So, but that's like, you know, that's just kind of the information we're getting right now to help us wrap our heads around what it might look like, and what we have to prepare for next year.
And, you know, I was on a CASBO call this afternoon and there was a lot of talk of masks and really to estimate just 2 masks a day for Amity is a total of about 994,000 masks a year. And at 59 cents a mask, that's over $500,000. So now, even if we're nowhere near that fraction, even if we're, you know, a quarter of it or whatnot, we don't have that money in the budget. And that's just masks. That's not protective shields if you're going to put them up in front of a cashier, in front of workspaces that may need to be more separated. So there was a lot of concern on that call about the PPE. There was concern about transportation if we're trying to do contract tracing and limit what exposure kids have to other kids. How do we transport them? But any scenario that we're currently discussing now costs more money. We are having 3 bus contractors meet on our next Zoom meeting with CASBO to weigh in and give us some input about, you know, creative ways we can do this to be, you know, most cost effective as possible. But it will most likely be more than we planned on it being.
Oh, thank you. And this is a fascinating topic, and I know that we're all very interested, but I just noticed the time at 6:24. I don't want to cut it short, but I also don't want to start the ABOE meeting too late. So I appreciate that heads up. Thank you for the review of the finances. If there are no other questions, we can move on to budget transfers. Okay, let's do that. We have the April in the packet. You can see there's some things for propane overages, kiln repair. Good to see the arts and the music programs are still going and being funded. Thank you for authorizing those replacements.
So I will ask.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Terry.
Excuse me, just that last transfer, really, when we get to the end of your transfers in the packet, I will ask you to include that last one because it inadvertently got lumped in and it's over $3,000. It really needs board approval. So for your approval and for the audit trail, I'll ask you to amend that last motion to include that budget transfer number 74.
Can I make a motion to lump these transfers all together? To recommend Amity Board to approve the supply transfers on page 165 through 168.
And including the baritone sax transfer 74.
Including the transfer 74.
You have a second on that?
So what you're talking, you're making one motion for all these?
Yeah, just in the sake of time.
Okay.
I think most of this is coming from, it's going to equipment, right? It's coming from facilities, it's coming from some contingency, text and digital resources to some other text and digital resources.
Yeah.
And truly, with the exception of the PPE, there are things that we've been talking about for a while as part of the budget process.
The
Yeah,
PPE is only.
I'll second that.
Oh, thanks, Matt. The PPE is only 4,500, so it's only 4,000.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Excuse me one moment. I just want approval, verification. Is that motion on just to vote on the 3, or is that motion to pass the 3?
The motion is just to vote on them all as one block of transfers.
Thank you.
With the addition of the baritone sax.
Correct.
A motion by Chris Brown, a second by Matt. we'll do a roll call vote and then we can actually take the vote. Is that correct, Dr. Byers?
That is
Okay.
correct, yes. So Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Okay. And so now I think you just need the motion to actually approve all of the transfers that are listed, including the baritone sax.
A motion to approve the lump of transfers altogether, including the baritone sax.
I'll second that also.
Thank you. Cardozo? Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Mr. Giglietti,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
and Dr. Turner.
I can't find the baritone sax, but yes.
That was that was the other one, there were
The
3,000.
It
last-
was in the
page
under
one.
300s, but it's actually more expensive, so we had to move it into the over 3,000. Sorry,
Okay.
Jenny,
that's why it's not
Jenny,
there.
Yeah.
Jenny, it's on a separate note. Get it? Separate note.
Chris, that's terrible. Hello. Ruth.
All right, well, I think,
I am getting a significant amount.
I'm sorry. Listen, I just wanted to make sure that we had all of our motions taken care of that we needed to do, right? And we are all correct and all voted.
I believe we are, yes, that is correct.
So we have literally 1 minute before we adjourn. Do we have any other business or any other discussion?
Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. All those in favor?
I just give a shout out at the end.
Don't you pay
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Sometimes
Meeting
Aye.
adjourned. 6:29
Bye, guys.
p.m. Thank you all.